Hello and welcome back, everyone, to our lovely little show, Oh, for Dying Out Loud, a podcast where we talk about life, death, and everything in between. I am your magical life midwife, Angie Cat. And joining me today, as ever, is the radiant Laura Shaw, divine death doula.
Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome. Felt like I should introduce you today.
Love it.
Are you feeling like a celebrity? You should be.
Oh, yeah.
So what are we talking about today, Laura?
Yeah, so today, friends, we are going to discuss aging and loss. So I'm getting older, as
Same.
we are, and I'm thankful for it. I'm grateful. I love I aspire my entire life to be an old lady, gray, crazy hair. I'm there, sitting on a porch with my wisdom, right?
I've always been that way. I'm just going to stop. Have you always been that way where you just like, oh, I just can't wait to be an old woman?
Yes. Yeah.
Why?
I think, first of all, I love old people.
Okay.
Just part of who I am.
Yeah.
So the other piece of me is that I just have this reverence for this magical knowledge that and not just the knowledge that people have as we age, but also that other people look to us for wisdom. And I don't know, I've always loved that. And there's a little piece of me that wants to live in an old caboose in the woods, that people just come to visit me for my wisdom. But
yes, right. You want to be the sage in the cabin in the woods, that people come to. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I am the all-knowing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
I get
Madam
that.
Trash Heap.
Right.
Rock. Yes, that is who I most resonated with in that children's program. So, but one of the things that I have found really interesting in partially in my aging and partially in my doula work is this incredible idea that as we get older, one of the beautiful parts about getting older means that we have to learn to embrace loss, or we will rail against it and fight it every step of the way. And I just really respect the idea that there's magic that comes with accepting it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally agree with you. I mean, and of course, this is such a broader reaching topic, I mean, I kind of probed you in terms of, why, and have you always wanted to be older? Because I have never had any issue getting older either. I've had friends that in their 20s, I had a friend, she was a roommate in college, and she started crying when she was 23 because I was like, what are you crying on your birthday for? She said, because I'm getting that much closer to 30. And I'm like, oh my heavens. I told her, I said, I actually look forward to being 40. And she said, why? And I said, because as I age, I'm hoping that I get all of my poop in a group and I know what's going on. Like, so to speak to what you were saying, it is this, you start to achieve this wisdom, and when I listen to, just to kind of promote it, I don't know if you've ever heard of Julia Louis-Dreyfus's got a podcast called Wiser Than Me.
Okay, I have not heard of this.
Oh, you need to go and listen to it. She's in her 60s and she interviews women who are older than her, like Jane Fonda and Diane von Furstenberg. And the finale was Carol Burnett, and that was a phenomenal show. Darlene Love, I mean, just all of these older women who just had immense amounts of wisdom to share, and they were incredibly vibrant, and I think the importance of this is because, like you said, I have friends now that are fighting it. And, there's that spiritual saying, what you resist persists. And if we continue to fight against it, I think it's going to make aging harder.
Yeah.
way harder. It's
Yes.
going to create a lot more misery for us instead of being able to recognize, like I have a beloved family member who shall remain nameless, who really struggles with it because they're slowing down and they're not able to do as much as what they used to when they were older. And I said at one point, I said, did you ever think that maybe you're supposed to slow down?
Right.
Like maybe that's the whole point of it, is you don't have to, keep running crazy, and you can take naps whenever you want to when you're retired. Like, how
Every
glorious
day.
is that?
Mhm.
It's every day.
Yeah.
So, and of course, our culture, that's a whole nother podcast. Our culture tells us that you've got to do everything you can to stop aging
Mhm.
because we've made aging into something that should be feared, that's going to be painful. We're going to be, we don't want to deal with any chronic illnesses, or we want to be able to do as much as we can. Now, I'm all for staying active. That's not what I'm saying. Active in our faculties, active in our body. There's lots of people out there that are still active well into their 80s and 90s.
Yep.
But, but there's some limitations, like, maybe you're not running marathons anymore when you're 80, but it doesn't mean that you still can't enjoy being active in your own way,
Yes. Yep.
But yeah, so I love that we're talking about this, because I think it's a continual subject we need to continue to talk about.
Right. Well, I think it's important to feed a different narrative. So,
Yes.
like you said, the narrative is stay young, stay young, stay young. Celebrities and people are always talking about politicians who look fit and who doesn't look fit, and they're too old. And one of the things that I think that really pushed me to have this feeling about wanting to be old is because first of all, this will surprise people who know me well at this age, because I love getting old because I can say whatever the hell I want to. And it's, like I used to, when my grandmother was still alive, I would just say, no, grandma, you can say that. Like, you're old. You say whatever you mean. Like,
Right.
you don't
Like,
have
you
to,
want
like,
the pie, you can have the pie.
right,
Yeah.
eat it, just go ahead. You want cake for breakfast, whatever, let's do it.
Right.
So I love that kind of live right now mentality. So
Right.
part of one of the things I've really learned to respect as I've
Mhm.
aged a bit, and I've watched the people around me age, is that one of the natural things that happens as we are blessed to be on this earth or plane of existence uh,
Mhm.
for any amount of time is we naturally are going to lose people.
Yeah.
We're going to lose pets. We're going to lose pieces of ourselves.
Yeah.
I broke my leg last year in the way, first of all, it didn't show up on an x-ray. I had to have an MRI, and the doctor said to me, oh, this is why they couldn't find it, because this is something you would normally only see in a 90-year-old. It's like a subcondylar fracture underneath my kneecap, couldn't see. And he goes, that's because nobody does that. How did you do that? Like, it was such a weird thing. And
And I know the story behind this. That's why I'm giggling so much.
yes, it's ridiculous. I
So
tripped
funny.
over a dog gate. It was so dumb. But right. And so I literally, and I'm the crazy one. I went to work. I like on my way to work, stopped at the ER. They said it's not broken, put me in a leg brace and had me
Grace,
follow
yeah.
up with the surgeon. And I went straight to work and worked that day because yes, that's what you do.
Right.
Right. So but what I appreciated about that is it did make me slow down. I still get twinges. I'm that old lady now who's like, oh, my sciatica's acting up, it must be gonna rain. So I have crazy things like that in my leg. It gets a little achy sometimes, and it really I have had to fight really hard to take more stairs. I went to Red Rocks to a concert, and the stairs at Red Rocks nearly did me in. for multiple
Yeah.
reasons. That's intense.
Look, I mean, a fit person would have troubles with the stairs at Red
Right,
Rocks. I mean, yeah,
right.
yeah,
So it's this natural progression that we can fight against it or deny it and injure ourselves worse,
yeah, yeah.
or we can just accept it, that it's part of this natural process of um, aging. And
Yeah,
what can we do in our lives as human beings as we are getting older to find better ways to embrace this part of our natural progression? And that includes
right.
losing faculties. I don't remember things as readily as I used to, or
Same.
right, right. Yeah, so what can we do?
Yeah,
And how do we live every day to the fullest so that we don't
yeah,
miss out?
right. Well, and I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, I think, that journey is for, everybody to determine how they're going to do that. Because, I mean, coming from a health and wellness background, I mean, certainly we know of things that can keep us healthy for
Mhm.
as long as possible. Because
Right.
there's a big difference between, we're not talking about getting younger or slowing the aging process.
Mhm.
What we're talking about from a scientific standpoint is we're talking about reducing morbidity. And what that means is we're reducing the amount of time in which we are suffering with a chronic condition that severely limits our quality of life.
Right.
So that's the big takeaway that I first want to mention, is that aging is only an issue really when or it can be more of an issue when we are dealing with a lack of quality of life.
Right.
Now, each person has to determine that, but the second point is what you were talking about in terms of, we get older, we start to lose more pets, more family, etc. So our lives are punctuated by a little bit more loss.
Mhm.
And this is what I think is where, the over dying out loud, the death dying and in between, life and death and everything in between comes in handy, because we lose jobs, we lose friends, we lose our car keys, we lose a favorite book. I mean, we lose a lot of different things.
Right.
And each one of these losses is training ground. It's training ground for
Right.
us as we approach the end. And, and I mean, it sounds simple. It's like, how in the world can losing a job or, losing, I'm moving or something and I lose my friends or what have you, how does that prepare me for the loss of death? Right. It's not apples and apples, but the common denominator is grief.
Yep.
And the common thing is that we do not do a good job of helping people to navigate grief.
Right.
So here's the thing, for example, a
So
high
sorry.
suicide. Oh, it's okay. Do we have a cat intrusion? We have a cat intrusion.
This alarm going off in my room, but my alarm clock, I don't know why. I don't set nighttime alarm, so I'm sorry. Continue.
Oh, yes, no problem. So one of the examples I think about is that, there's a high suicide rate with firefighters, policemen. And why? Because there is a sense of loss of who and how I define myself when I retire.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but there's that thing, nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about the fact that this is going to feel like grief, just like grief from losing a pet. It
Yeah.
literally is. It's the same emotion. You're grieving all these different things, and people are going to grieve differently, but it's grief all the same.
Mhm.
And so when we allow ourselves and start to get good at being able to face those losses, and instead of pushing down those emotions or ignoring them or numbing them out, whatever your favorite vice is, then we start to really taste the sweetness of life, in my opinion, because life is full of loss. Life is full of joy and beginnings and receiving. But if we can learn how to navigate those losses, it's like you can't know hot water unless you know cold water. You can't know joy unless you know grief, and loss. And because they're both a part of life, it creates a richness and empathy and compassion. It cultivates all of those things. So yeah, I'm noticing it, like all of these famous people, for example, that I grew up with on TV shows or movies or whatever that are passing away. And I'm like, oh, that's getting a little close to home, but it gives every single time, it gives me pause. It gives me pause for, oh, let me take a moment and just reminisce about the good memories that I have from that person or that experience.
Right.
And what do I want to take from that that's going to add richness to my life now, And so it's really about cultivating presence in my mind.
Yes. Which I think is probably true for most things.
Right.
It always comes back for me. It typically comes back to presence. And every time I experience a loss, because, just because I work in this space, it doesn't mean that I'm not impacted by it. Someone said to me, oh, I could never do what you do because I'm too empathic. I am too. I'm like, I can walk in a room and know exactly how other people are feeling. And then I have to convince myself what's theirs and what's mine, because sometimes that gets sticky.
It gets muddy.
Yes. So it's not that I'm not feeling emotions or don't get attached to people. It's because I have learned along the way that, or I've at least accepted in my own existence that I wouldn't give up the bad or the messy or the painful because I would have to give up that good. So if I lost my beautiful cat, I also lost my cat recently. And
Your old Bob.
Poor Bob. 17 years nearly of his existence in this house with me in my life. And I wouldn't give that back. Like if I could go back in time, I wouldn't, for all the pain that it has caused, or my grandma, or friends that have passed, or whoever. And then the other thing I think it does for me, and hopefully for other people, is when something like that happens, I think, like you've said, someone your age, or a celebrity, someone, when Prince passed away, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I wish I had seen him in concert.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then it's like, well, I never want to regret that again. Like, I don't want to have not that I need to go see every person in concert ever. But I don't second guess myself when I want to go do something anymore.
Right.
Because I think the experience to me is that's the good stuff. Like the experiences and the things that we do in life. Too often I have seen people in my personal life and just in general who have, spent their whole life working, and this is what you do. You go to school, you get married, you have kids, you work hard, you retire. And then they retire and 3 days later they die, or they find out they're very ill, or they're no longer able to. Sure, they did all the right things their whole life. And then suddenly they're not able to enjoy, I think what I've taken away from, and every time I am reminded of, is that I am never promised to make it to retirement. I'm not promised that I'm going to have tomorrow. I'm hopeful,
for sure.
hopeful.
Yeah.
But I I would not wish away a minute of the crazy things that I have experienced, or
Adventures.
yeah, or the opportunities to experience things, and
Right.
all the messy. And that, I think that for me, that's one of the most beautiful things, as a death doula, or a person who's death positive, um, is that I,
Mhm.
even at the end of your life, when you are blessed enough to know ahead of time that it's coming, which is a blessing and a curse,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
I see it more often that the person who is experiencing the death is
Mhm.
more prepared than the people who are preemptively grieving the loss of that person. And I just want
Right.
everyone to take this minutes of that
Mhm.
moment and just love the experience, and don't worry about what it's going to look like when they're gone. You can talk about the fear or the discomfort of it, but I think it's more important, if this was my last day, this was my last podcast with
Mhm.
you, that we just got to
Mm.
soak each other up, and that we soaked up this time to
Yeah.
get. And for that, I think when I like to say that I have no regrets, it's not that I've never done anything that I'm like, that was suspect. It's that it's that
I don't doubt that.
right, there's been a lot of living here.
Yeah.
Um, but that is the part that I think is most important to me, is that
Yeah.
I have lived every minute that I could, because I have definitely
Right.
had years where I'm like, shit, I don't remember what happened that year or whatever, because I was too
Yeah.
busy not paying attention, uh, going through the
Right.
moment. And
Right.
it's like, no, I'm
Yeah.
getting older. I need to slow down.
And be present. I mean,
Yeah,
that's exactly, I mean,
yeah.
it's all about presence,
Hmm.
right? And, and I think that's very interesting that you talk about that, because, and there's so many, I mean, for our listeners out there, look, there's so many different ways that death shows up. We
Right.
know that, and loss is loss, and it's painful. And we're not
Right.
saying, that it's not going to be,
Mhm.
but the more that we can be present and sit within our emotions, however messy and painful, that only strengthens our emotional resiliency, our emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
and our ability to live a full life. And when I say a full life, I mean, certainly Laura is a thrill seeker. We know this about her, but living a full life doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to all the concerts and you're doing all the wild adventures. A full life for you might
Right.
just literally be being able to just relax,
Right.
and instead of living from a place of I'm constantly afraid of the end. This is the other piece of where I come in as a medium, is that that has transformed my way of being, because it's like, I know that life goes on after this.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not going to be in the skin suit. That's my belief system, is that my energy, my soul is going to go on. And so the more I remember that, the easier it is for me to be, and to give myself a break, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks, but they talk about, you never get it all done. So quit
Right.
trying. You never get it all done.
Mhm.
So just be present with whatever is happening here. Because, so as an example, oh my gosh. So last year, I had this beautiful friend, have, I should still say. She was a yoga student of mine, and she had struggled for years off and on with breast cancer. And she had kicked it once. And I mean, this girl was a model in her community. I mean, she was very community active. Everybody knew her. She had come into our yoga studio that I had owned and was like, I'm going to volunteer all my time here. I want to know what you do. I want to learn everything about it. And our yoga studio ended up, falling by the wayside. That's a whole nother podcast. So it didn't last for whatever reason. The owners, we just didn't make that happen. But she went ahead and created a very successful yoga studio, very successful business. And she's widely and highly regarded in her community. She was, in my opinion, she was an angel embodied. She was everything that she was my protege, but yet at the same time, I looked up to her and the way that she interacted with her family, her kids, her community. And when she kicked cancer the first time, I was like, of course, that's exactly who she is. Good on you, right? And then I came home from a business trip and I hadn't been, on Facebook much. We had fell out of touch a little bit because we live in different cities. And I saw all these posts about her passing. And oh my goodness, it felt like a kick in the gut. And I just sobbed because, number one, all of those things flood back to, oh, I should have made more time to connect with her. I should have kept in touch. I could have done something for her. Why wasn't I there for her during her struggle, etc. All of those things. But it was also just the loss of her presence. And what's interesting is that to watch what happened after that, number one, watching her navigate her own death was inspirational. She had a very strong faith in God. She had she's very much a Christian, and she really embodied her faith. And, so that she was completely at peace with it. She was like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to meet Jesus. And for those of you who that doesn't resonate for you, the point is that she was very at home in her faith and present with the fact that my body is failing me and there is nothing more that I can do about it. So I can either be miserable, fight against it. I can, she did all the treatments she could. And she finally was just like, yeah, I got set up with a really cozy chair at home and I came home to be with my husband and my kids at my last hour. And the community members, while there was an outpouring of grief, I'm sure, I was surprised by the fact and heartened by the fact that a great majority of it was celebrating her, celebrating everything that she did and how much she inspired people. And through her inspiration, I'm getting goosebumps talking about her, she must be here, but just through the way that she inspired her family, her loved ones, her open conversations about her death, her impending death, it inspired the community to have a completely different response than what we might normally think of.
Right.
When someone, because she was 38 and left two children behind and a husband. It's tragic. It is really tragic. And yet she navigated it she'd made peace. She was present. She was fully present with her kids and her family and her loved ones through the very end, and lived a very full life in those 38 years. And yes, the loss was grievous. It was grievous to me, but it was also a lesson. It was a real-time lesson in, wow, I can only hope and want to learn and practice the principles that we talk about in this podcast so that I can live that well, that it does not matter when my death happens or how it happens, that I will approach it with, the same level of grace. Now, I'm not saying that she wasn't frustrated, angry, sad, grieving at any point during her process.
Right.
But that is part of the grace of it. Mm-hmm. Today, I'm going to have an epic meltdown about it. And tomorrow, I'm going to continue to be more and more at peace. But her spiritual practices also helped a great deal with that. And I think that that's what we can pull from. This is the thing, we can pull from the death of someone we love and how they lived to inform the way that we live
Right.
and how we choose to die.
Yes. And some people do it really, really well. And some people do
Yeah.
it really, really poorly. I will say.
And that's okay. I mean,
Yes.
we're human,
Yes. And that's the
You-
beautiful part of it, is that I get to see that and decide for myself
Mhm.
what I want. Just as
Yeah.
anyone here in this space, you get to decide how you want it and how what your takeaway is from it, which could be completely different.
Right.
And I hope that one thing people will take is that no matter what, that you're at least open to grace is a term that I use a lot about it, to give ourselves generous intent,
Yeah.
to remind ourselves
Mhm.
that, yeah, maybe my leg doesn't work as well as it used to, or my knee, or whatever. And like you said, I don't have to go see Prince in concert. But maybe my presence is taking more time to go work on a garden, or sit and read a book, or talk to my grandchildren, or whatever it is. It can be anything. Maybe it's sitting at a lake by yourself. I don't know. But
Right.
whatever it is,
Mhm.
allow yourself the space to do that,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
don't continually put it off in the name of, well, when I retire, or when I, like, that is my biggest, like, it's like the fancy dishes that everyone always says, saving for a special occasion. Don't save them. Life is a
Yeah.
special occasion. It's
Use
the
them.
same principle.
Yeah,
This
for
is
sure.
the occasion today. So do
Yeah.
something to honor that, and to honor the fact that you're gonna lose things. You're gonna, maybe you lose your
Mhm.
hair. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
turning gray. Maybe it's that you're, whatever, that you're just not able to do things as well as you used to do. And that's really that's a beautiful and it's like the backwards generation of watching a baby who comes into the world not being able to do anything, and then watching them progressively grow and change. So it's kind of the same
Right.
thing to,
Right.
only we do it in reverse. And I think there's we should honor that as much as we do the rest.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And I think that's, as we, begin to think about wrapping up our conversation, I just got back from a spiritual retreat. And so and they did such a great job of saying, okay, so now here's what your homework. And so I'm like, oh, yes, homework, so if I were to give our listeners some homework, one of the things I think that's useful is to take some time to journal about losses that
Mhm.
you have experienced in your life, and particularly losses that you may not have considered before, and have you properly grieved them?
Right.
So, for example, I moved from Colorado back to Iowa. My chosen family is here. I love this area. It's, the cost of living is a lot nicer or more friendly to me than Colorado was. But, I had established a routine, and I had established things. And, just even though it was a happy occasion, there was still a grief process.
Mhm.
Grief can happen in any major change
Yeah.
that we have, it doesn't have to be anything negative necessarily. It can be positive change. But, when I moved to Colorado to begin with, I had I had a yoga business, and, I was doing a lot of other things. And when I left, the loss was, well, I miss doing that, right? But also the loss translated into, who am I now without that?
Right.
And I think that's at the crux of a lot of loss is, wow, what does this mean for me? How does this define me? How do I not let it define me? But I had to come to grips with why am I a little bit depressed about this? Because I had defined myself as, oh, she is well known for her music and for her yoga, et cetera, whatever. And when I'm not doing that, then it's like it's a small death. That
Right.
part of me had died. And so it's like having little mini funerals, little mini rituals to honor, wow, this is where I was in this chapter of my life. Let me honor that. Let me grieve whatever losses I sustained from that. And let me pull some of the wisdom out from it. And new life is born. So in any of these situations, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, I do. But I think that our lives are kind of a microcosm of what happens to us on a grander human scale. All
Yeah.
these big life changes are mini deaths. And out of those mini deaths, a rebirth arises and something new arises. Whether that's a newfound presence, a newfound, I'm learning to slow down and I'm enjoying it, a new job, a new relationship, whatever it might be. But there are these little mini deaths. And so that's where I love looking at ritual. And so the homework is looking at some of these big life changes. What were the losses? Did you grieve them? How can you honor them with even such a small ritual as just saying a prayer of grace and thanksgiving, right? And then pick one from that. What is the piece of wisdom that you have kind of gleaned from that you're going to now impart upon your life today? That's my homework for you.
I love that.
You're in school now. I'm schooling everybody. So, because I think that's what's going to help us. If we're going to live well, we need to learn to die well. And we can do that by looking at all the little mini deaths that we have, all the losses that we sustain throughout our lives, and learning to navigate through those highs and lows. It just makes life richer, I think. But it's richer does not necessarily mean that it's easy or that it's, not messy or sad.
Right.
So,
so
that's my 2 cents.
I appreciate your 2 cents because I appreciate that you have said or pointed out that that the losses need to be honored, and that from that it's a rebirth.
Yeah.
Because when you did move to Colorado, we all grieved with you, my friend, your family here. But we also celebrated like this new opportunity for you in your life. And so, and then we found new ways to do things and COVID and whatever.
Yeah.
But one of the beautiful things I will say is that, so I've said it before, Angie was at one point in my lifetime my yoga coach, and I love, like, she is an amazing yoga coach, and she doesn't do that for her business any longer. Maybe someday, maybe not. However, this new iteration of you and the wisdom and things that you share are so, I think, so much truer to you and more like, don't get me wrong, I've still got my Angie DVDs and I watch them, and there are videos on the YouTube channel. So
there are, yes, exactly.
So I still have my Angie yoga coach.
Yeah.
But I have learned from you that grief process, because I was sad. And it's like, oh, I love my Angie. yoga coach. It's so amazing. And then this new iteration of you is so amazing that even though that other iteration was amazing,
Yeah.
I love this new. So I
Yeah.
love that you have said that. It speaks to me of a phoenix rising from the ashes, even though those weren't necessarily ashes. Um, but
They
you
felt like it.
right, you needed to step away from it. And
Yeah.
I understand how some people could get stuck. Like, no, when are you going to do
Mhm.
yoga again? Because that,
Oh, and I've gotten that. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
And
Yeah.
I don't ever need you to do yoga again. First of all, like I said, I got my DVDs. I can make you do yoga every single
Yeah.
day, friend.
See, there you go.
Uh,
Yeah.
but on top of that,
Yeah.
I have watched you grow and become truer, I think, to who you are in this phase. And I
Mm,
love that for you. Um,
thank you.
yeah,
That's
so
so,
I love that you said
that's,
that. That is such an important point. That
well, that's evolution.
mhm,
That is evolution. We are all here to evolve in some sort of way. It's
yeah,
always going to be like you are Laura 2.0 as well. When I met you as a client, and then we did some other coaching, and then you figured out that you wanted to be a death doula, and you are thriving, and you're just on fire with this passion. And so every one of us has a little bit of that in us, so even that's the juxtaposition, right? Is that even though our bodies are physically aging,
mhm,
we are still evolving.
right,
And there's all these little mini deaths that come into rebirths, and we evolve to a higher level, right? Even as we are still aging. So, the more that we can take a bigger step back and look at our lives from that lens, we can understand that aging doesn't necessarily, I mean, look at all these celebrities, like the ones I talked about in Julia Louis-Dreyfus's podcast.
mhm,
Seriously, go listen to it. Wiser Than Me. It's hilarious, number one. And it is so insightful, the people she talks to, the women that she talks to that are older than her, because these are women that they have gone through lots of losses. They have gone through many iterations. But it never stopped them.
right,
Never once did any of these people say, well, I'm just getting too old to do any of that. I'm just getting too old for XYZ. Yeah, they may slow down. They may have to take in consideration their health and their well-being and whatever, but it didn't stop them from wanting to engage in their lives.
right.
And so, yes, the body continues to die, but our spirit and soul continues to drive the bus, and so we can, yes, we're going to stop off at loss every once in a while. We're going to cry, and then we're going to hop back on the bus, and then we're going to move on to the next destination. So that's our hope for you, our lesson for you, our beloved listeners.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to our grassroots conversation about death, dying, and everything in between, because we believe that we can die better. We can learn to die better.
Yeah.
And in doing so, we learn to live more fully as well. And that's our mission, folks. That's our mission.
Yeah.
So remember your homework, think about the losses you've had, maybe journal about those, but also think about the wisdom and the inspiration that you've gleaned from that, and how is that inspiring your life today? And drop us a comment below. We'd love to hear what your insights were, or if you've got questions. We love that. So please continue to come back. We love talking with you about all of these topics, wide ranging, obviously, because life is like that, and so is death. And share this with your friends and your loved ones. The more we can talk about it, the more death is less scary, and the more life is more exciting.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, my friend, it's always a pleasure to connect with you. Thank you for your time and your wisdom. What a great conversation.
Yeah.
So we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. And until then, for dying out loud, just live your best life. Thank you, friend.